when you listen to this selection, may I remind you of an everlasting great promise by our Creator, Edumare. Edumare, 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 Mowio, Edumare, Edumare, ni yóò pèsè fún wa o, Edumare, ni yóò pèsè fún mi. Edumare is our Edumare provider. Edumare, Edumare, Mowio, Edumare, Edumare is your provider. Edumare, ni yóò pèsè fún wa o, Edumare, ni yóò pèsè fún mi. Remember, the snail has no hands. Ìgbín kò lọ́wọ́. The snail has no legs. Lẹ́sẹ̀ o. Yet, provides for the snail. Edumare, ni yóò pèsè fún wa. And so it is. Edumare, ni yóò pèsè fún mi. Will provide for you. Gently, gently crawls the snail. Eso, 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 eso. I believe. Eso, 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 eso. Snail is never in a hurry. Eso, eso, nígbín máa ń ra o, Eso, eso, nígbín máa ń ra. Yet, the provider is eso, eso, mo wí o. Eso, eso, I believe.
Professor Gabriel Adu Oyibo, a mathematician and scientist born in Kogi State, Nigeria, West Africa, is one of the most important people living on the planet today. Over a 35-year period of research, Professor Oyibo continued Dr. Albert Einstein's search for a unified force responsible for all motion in the universe. And in 1990, he discovered what Dr. Einstein spent his life searching for. It was first published when he presented the Navier-Stokes solution in 1992 and was further articulated with the publication of his book, Generalized Mathematical Proof of Einstein's Theory Using a New Group Theory, published in 1995. Today, this mathematical proof is what Professor Oyibo calls Gagut. Gagut stands for God's Almighty Grand Unified Theorem of Mathematical Physics and Beyond. It is a theorem, not a theory. A theory, by definition, is a systematically organized knowledge based on assumptions and accepted principles. A theorem, however, is a process that has risen to the level of a mathematical proof. In the realm of mathematics and physics, a theorem provides the basis for the legitimacy of a grand unified, a force that encompasses everything, or a theory of everything. The present physical cosmos in which we function is driven by essentially four different types of motion. The motion generated by the force of gravity, the motion generated by electromagnetic force, and at the subatomic level, the motion generated by strong and weak forces. Even before the work of Isaac Newton, the science of Western civilization had been on a quest to find the grand unified theorem. If you look at gravity, If you look at electromagnetism, if you look at the strong and weak forces, there is no motion that cannot be explained by one of the forces that generated that motion, and therein was the great challenge. Western science were aware of the four known forces of the universe, but they didn't know how to integrate them into one grand unified field. The best minds of their time committed themselves to a lifetime struggle. Albert Einstein, built on Isaac Newton's theory of gravity and Maxwell's theory of electromagnetism, and changed the world with one equation: E equals mc squared. However, the theory of relativity could not account for subatomic phenomena in the universe, and Einstein spent the rest of his life in search of a unified field theory. Since Einstein's time, search intensified, resulting in quantum theory, string theory, and many other approaches that have deepened our understanding, but still, there was no cohesiveness among these theories that could articulate one force in terms of the other three. In a 35-year journey, G, I, J, comma, J equals 0, the one equation that could answer all existing theories with one grand unified theorem came to us through an extraordinary individual by the name of Professor Gabriel Oyibo. Professor Oyibo declares this theorem to be God's blessing to Africa's people. For this reason, the decision was made to present Gagut to the world from a hosting African nation, one that plays a central role to the development of the African world. If a development of this magnitude were of European origin, it would most likely be held in London, Gotterdam, Paris, or Washington, D.C. With a population of over 119 million, Nigeria is the largest concentration of African people in the world. With as many as 400 ethnic groups across the country, it is also among the largest concentration of cultural diversity among African people on the African continent. Home to the Niger River Delta, Nigeria is a part of the rich heritage of the great Benin, Mali, Sangay civilization that flourished for over 1,000 years. Nigeria is also the country of Professor Oyibo's birth and growth into young manhood in the Nigerian educational system. It was only appropriate that a global presentation as significant as the Grand Unified Theorem take place in its capital, Abuja, Nigeria. By invitation of the Nigerian federal government and the National University Commission, where the presentation took place over the period of a month-long tour, zonal lectures covering the 38 universities within the NUC Commission were given. The theorem was presented to Nigeria's academic community to be scrutinized by world-class mathematicians and scientists who challenged its authenticity. Of even greater significance was the warm reception of the masses of Nigerian people who recognized and appreciated Professor Oyibo not only for his accomplishments, but for the rare level of his love and commitment for Nigeria and the African world. For him to bring back home 35 years of intense work, resulting in the ultimate research model to explain the universe in a simple and elegant way. In November of 2004, the Nigerian Senate voted unanimously on a resolution to create the International African Prize for Science and Technology and make it the highest scientific award in the history of academic achievement, with Professor Oyibo as its maiden awardee. This film is a part of a celebration of this theorem. It documents the first official presentation of the Grand Unified Theorem to Africa, to the world, and to the African people all over the world.
Well, he's a nominee for the Nobel Prize in Physics, and he lives right here on Long Island. Professor Gabriel Oyibo can claim many accomplishments, but what got him nominated for the Nobel Prize is his theory of everything.
Welcome back to News 12 Long Island. We're going to salute a very talented Long Islander right now, Dr. Gabriel Oyibo of Dix Hills, revising Einstein's famous theory of relativity, and his new calculations has earned him a Nobel Prize nomination for physics this year. We are very pleased to have Dr. Oyibo with us. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much, Doc.
All right,
The achievement has earned him a Nobel Prize nomination. Gabriel Oyibo created the unified field theory. It's an education based in quantum physics. The theory combines the works of both Einstein and Newton. Unified field theory blends math and science to give insight into the very basis of our existence.
It turned out that people found mathematics to be one route. As you know, mathematics is a language.
Dr. Gabriel Oyibo has answers to the questions that puzzled Einstein right up until his death. He has unified the theories of electromagnetic force and gravity while incorporating quantum physics. But if you look beyond first glance, you see Dr. Oyibo's breakthrough is far more than numbers and equations.
Because the answer to the question, is it the Big Bang theory that the universe came into existence, or the Word of God, which the scripture says created the universe. And so Albert Einstein was preoccupied with how to find a solution, and he died in the process of trying to find a solution. And so therefore people recognize that that must be an interesting problem. So everybody jumped on the bandwagon, tried to find a solution. And what has happened is that we were able to be blessed by the Almighty God with a solution to that problem after studying his work for 35 years. And basically what we found was that the account given by the science, which is the Big Bang theory, have a common denominator in a wave theory. A wave theory? Yes, because the Big Bang has a wave connotation to it in terms of the sound and explosion. And then the Word of God is also a wave, because that's a sound wave. So basically the scriptures and science are speaking the same language.
Interesting.
Yes.
So the theory of relativity, of course, just explain that.
Yeah. The theory of relativity, was on its way to answering the total question, and it dealt with the gravity, which is a major part of this force field. There are 4 of them that are known currently: gravity, electromagnetic, strong, and the weak forces. Okay, the theory of relativity actually deals with the gravity component. Maxwell had dealt with electromagnetic. The strong and the weak is been puzzling everybody. So they want all those 4 combined, and what the equation did was to combine not just those 4, but others that may not have been found yet. The graph that you're seeing there is the unification of the 4 force fields that are known, as well as those that have not been known yet. We were able to show that Maxwell and Einstein, as well as Newton, have one curve described, which is the first curve to the right there. It shows a force field that has a center right to the left, the beginning, what's called the origin. That's where the source of the force field that moves the universe is located. And from there, as you move away, you can see the force is coming down, meaning that it's diminishing, which is expected like a ripple. So then the first one is the electromagnetic as well as the gravity, which is what Einstein wanted to unify. And then in the middle was Yukawa estimate of the strong force field, because we needed that in order to build build a bomb in the 30s and the 40s.
That's right.
So, but they didn't have it. However, he made an estimate. We reproduced that in our solutions, as well as give the actual correct result for the strong force field, which is given, has a proper range to it, and then the one that's most elusive, which is the weak force field. And humanity needs to be concerned about the weak force field because neutrino is the source of basically cancer that we all have.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it permeates through, tons of lead. If you pile lead, this thing goes through it. That means our bones and everything else was no obstruction to this particular thing at all. But the force field has been very elusive. We found that one as well. Ultimately, the unification of forces deals with the story of creation and the Almighty God. That basically tells the origin of where we come from.
In unifying the two theories of force, Dr. Oyibo believes he has unified everything in the universe, all of existence, from the physical to the spiritual. Everything comes from one single source.
The universe, as you see it, is a force. The universe being a force field then means that particles or things that you see are just concentrations of those that field.
Through his work, Oyibo says the scientific explanation of creation and the religious explanation are proven one and the same.
In the beginning, the universe was a wave field. A wave field is the same thing as the Word of God, because the Word of God is also a wave. Sound wave.
It all sounds pretty amazing. Well, scientists around the world think so too. Dr. Oyibo has been nominated for the Nobel Prize in Physics, a lifetime of work ending in ultimate success.
It's a spiritual journey that started basically from elementary school, more or less, but eventually got properly in place by high school.
Dr. Oyibo spent 3 years working on his unified field theory, and his journey is far from over. Oyibo's mission now is to share his discoveries with society, not just scientists, but everyday people, to help make the world a better place.
The Council of the City of New York is proud and pleased to honor Professor Gabriel A. Oyibo on this celebration of Juneteenth 2003 for his significant and valuable work in the community. Now, therefore, be it known that the Council of the City honors Professor Gabriel A. Oyibo for years of outstanding service to the city and the nation. Signed this 19th day of June in the year 2003, Gifford Miller, Speaker for the entire Council, Charles Barron, Council Member, 42nd District, Brooklyn. Let's welcome him.
Published in this book called the Grand Unified Theorem. His work has united Newton's universal gravitation and Maxwell's electromagnetic force fields with Einstein's general relativity and his unified force theories. The results of his work has brought together a nomination of him for the Nobel Prize in Mathematical Physics. His work is very voluminous work. I want to thank Dr. Ingram for allowing him to go around to our schools and to speak to the students about his great work. He has verified the theories of Dr. Einstein and taken it to another level. And his work is found in this great book, The Grand Unified Theorem. I'd like to take this opportunity to bring him forward to have him speak to you briefly about his work. Dr. Oyibo.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, distinguished board members and staff. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been asked to come and interact with the youngsters in your school area. And so far it's been a pleasure to interact with those youngsters. My history, on a brief note, started in a high school, similar to what you have here. In a school called St. Augustine, I was caught making noise, and as a punishment, I was asked to add numbers from 1 to n. And the first week I did that, I sweated, because the last number was large. The next week they caught me again and they gave me the same punishment, except the ending number was larger. By the third week of the same punishment, I developed a formula to ease my pain. And the formula was, if n was the last number, I would divide that by 2, then multiply by n plus 1. And so it allowed me to do the punishment, of course. With that successfully done and proven mathematically, my discipline teacher stopped the punishment because it made it possible for me to give the answer right quick. Then, of course, he called me to the office and said to me, "Do you realize what you've done?" And I said, "Well, I've just found a shortcut to your punishment." But he said, "No, beyond that." And I said, "No." He said, does the name Gauss mean anything to you, G-A-U-S-S? And I said, "No." He said, "Well, he, along with Newton and Euler, are considered the most famous mathematicians of all time, and that Gauss came into that fame by developing the same formula." So I asked him for a book on Gauss, which he gave to me, and I read, and it was like he said. Then I went further, and I read more about Newton, and I read more about Albert Einstein. That's where I got started. I was already doing fairly well in geometry. As a matter of fact, they coined a name for me eventually, after that formula development, calculus, by my colleagues. But I was very interested in geometry. I love proofs. So when I discovered that relativity was geometry, it was fun. Then I also found out that E is equal to mc squared came out of that geometry of transformation. It was fascinating. I also learned that Einstein's colleague, Henrik Lorentz, was the second person to get the Nobel Prize in physics. He was also a geometry type. I was fascinated. Then, of course, Albert Einstein would go to relativity theory, general relativity theory, to figure out the gravitational force that keeps the planets in motion. And he was on his way to actually formulating the unification of all the forces of the universe. But stopped because he passed on in 1955 and left the problem uncompleted. So I made a vow to pursue the finding of the solution to that problem. But he left a hint that helped me. That hint was, he said, this problem is pretty difficult, but I believe in my guts as I'm passing on to see my creator that the solution lies in geometry. So I went over my geometry and searched, and eventually the solution came up, and we published that with the American Mathematical Society reviews and the rest of the world. And we were fortunate to have been nominated for a Nobel Prize in physics, mathematical physics. But I've been on the road ever since then, trying to talk to youngsters like the ones that I'm talking over here. So that's basically my story. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Applauded to our audience. We, as a preamble to just our saluting this great work,
I was reminded that I had the opportunity to present him with a staff that says Galileo. And I chose Galileo because Aristotle had a philosophy much like Einstein. And in his philosophy, he said that weight taken up in a drop from a height, one weight 5 pounds, another weight 10 pounds, hit the ground at different times. And Galileo took a look at that and said, no, I find that that is not the reality. And Galileo called all of the learned minds together, put them at the base of the tower, and dropped the weights, both 1 5 and 1 10 pounds, and they hit the ground at the same time. And all of the learned men saw this phenomenon, but they dismissed out of hand their own views, their own recognition of the information, and continued to support Aristotle's theory. Well, Dr. Oyibo has blown Einstein, not built on Einstein, not blown it out of the water, but built on Einstein's theory. And we thought it important that our children would see an individual who challenged the process. And I don't know about you, but when I heard of Einstein, it was like somebody you could never touch. You know, in reality, he has touched him and carried the formula even further. So, Mrs. Truesdale and Mr. Cavallo, if you would come forward as well, because they understood after we made the review to them and maneuvered the process so that we could have him come and speak to our children. And I don't want to ignore their effort. I don't want to ignore the fact, too, that Erbo Anawu gave me the insight to call him forward. Whereas Dr. Gabriel Oyibo is a renowned scientist, mathematician, and nominee for the 2002 Nobel Prize in Physics. And whereas Dr. Oyibo will visit Miami-Dade County, or is visiting Miami-Dade County's public schools, October 21st through the 24th, to share with the students, the teachers, and others his scientific expertise. And whereas Dr. Gabriel Oyibo has distinguished himself by developing the Grand Unified Theorem, commonly referred to as the theory of everything, which has been affirmed by the scientific community as a revision and an extension of the seminal works of Albert Einstein and Isaac Newton's theory of relativity and the gravitational force. And whereas the visit of Dr. Gabriel Oyibo has a distinguished scholar, an African-American role model, to schools in Miami-Dade County, and particularly those with the Title I program, will serve as an inspiration to students. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the school board of Miami-Dade County, Florida, approve resolution number 0240 of the school board of Miami-Dade County honoring Dr. Gabriel A. Oyibo for his visit and educational contributions to Miami-Dade County Public Schools, presented this 23rd day of October, 2002, Giving Our Students the World, signed by our chair, Mrs. Provost Tabaris Hantman, and our superintendent, the Merritt Steerheim, to a great man for a great work.
Professor Oyibo was born in 1950. In the Igalo Kingdom, Ida being its capital, in Kogi State, Nigeria, West Africa. He attended the St. Boniface Primary School and later St. Augustine Secondary School. He obtained his bachelor's degree at Amadou Bello University, Zaire, Nigeria. Professor Oyibo obtained his PhD in aeronautics and mathematics from Rensselaer Polytechnic University in Troy, New York, USA, where he worked for several years on NASA-sponsored research and made several contributions in aircraft design, aerodynamics, aeroelasticity, mathematics, and taught several courses. Professor Oyibo introduced the concept of affine transformations into the field of aeroelasticity and aeronautics, which is used by permanent researchers and airline companies around the world. In 1983, Professor Oyibo held the record of having the greatest number of publications in the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics journals worldwide. He was selected by NATO as a contributor to their unstudied transonic aerodynamic research. He was a consultant to half a dozen aerospace companies around the world, the United States, and the United Nations. recipient of several professional and scientific awards, including the Associate Fellow from the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. He found a new holographic technique for determining long, linear, two-dimensional study and three-dimensional flow, resulting in a new analysis with the use of the Cray supercomputer. He published several textbooks: A New Group Theory for Mathematical Physics, Applied Mathematics, Methods and Applications, Generalized Mathematical Proof of Einstein's Theory Using a New Group Theory, and the Grand Unified Theorem. In the year 2000, he was invited to brief the United States Senate on the Unified Field Theorem. Professor Oyibo has been nominated for the Presidential Medal of Science and a three-time nominee for the world-renowned Nobel Prize. These nominations were supported by distinguished professors from prestigious universities such as the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. He has also been selected by the Cambridge International Biographical Center in England as the International Personality of the year 2001-2002. The Cambridge International Biographical Center has also selected Professor Oyibo as one of 2,000 outstanding scientists of the 21st century. In summary, he is referred in the Who is Who of America in science and engineering, and Who is Who in the world. He was also awarded the Educator of the Year Award in 1989 and 1990. He is recognized in his hometown by His Royal Majesty, the Royal Attar of Igala, in recognition of the book he published on new group theory for mathematical physics, gas dynamics, and turbulence. Professor Oyibo has been involved in research and teaching at Polytech University since 1986, serving as an associate professor of aeronautics and currently a professor of mathematics and mathematical science at the Offutt Institute of Technology and the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut. With the professor's findings, he hopes, with the right funding, that even incurable diseases such as cancer, AIDS, Parkinson's syndrome will be curable. Based on the Gagut formula, cells in the affected human body will be retuned rather than killed. Viruses that attack the body's T cell are not living organisms and therefore cannot be killed. They merely utilize the energy from the T cell to multiply themselves. Professor Oyibo's discovery will help doctors to retune the cell instead of destroying them, providing a more permanent cure. Professor Gabriel Oyibo, a Nigerian and a mathematician, scientist, and educator of the highest caliber, is also an excellent seed for our young people to pique their interest in mathematics, science, technology, and philosophy. No doubt, there must be some more Gabriel Oyibos in our schools out there. It's our collective responsibility to encourage them.
Brown kind of indicated earlier. Okay, if we say you have Grand Unified in street parlance, so what? Meaning, what can you do with it? Good question, good scientific question. And in the tradition of questions, allow me to ask a few. How many folks here with us this afternoon, going to evening, had breakfast this morning? Or if not breakfast, lunch, dinner. Ate today. Okay, we got a winning question. Almost everyone here has. That is, in some way we ingested some energy, some food. And if we did it in the traditional American way, we may have had some Kellogg's Corn Flakes, or Post Raisin Bran, or General Mills Cheerios. The point is that if we had food in America, there's an excellent chance that that food came to us from some of the agricultural giants, as was just indicated, or perhaps ADM, Arthur Daniels Midland, one of the top processors of food in the planet. And how did they get to have food in such quantity and process it with such precision that they feed the world, including us at this point? Well, they have a highly developed capacity to do what is called modeling, a technology of building something with mathematical specificity and precision from which you can do something else. So if you had, I don't know what the actual numbers are, say an acre of corn that prior to modeling gave you 5,000 bushels, post-modeling perhaps 20,000 bushels. A force multiplier, 5,000 to 20,000. How many folks with us here in this gathering drove themselves here or came by a train? Okay, let's say you drove yourself here in a product made by Ford or Chrysler or General Motors or Nissan, and say your particular car has 200 horsepower. What is that teaching us? Well, that's 200 times 1 horsepower. If your ancestor had come to a gathering 100 years ago using 1 horse, now you come today with 200 horses in a little box, perhaps 4 feet by 3 feet by 2 feet. What are you driving down the street? You're driving living, breathing, modeling, technology, mathematical physics applied. Again, a force multiplier. In this instance, 200 times. So that's transportation. How many folks in here have a cell phone? How many folks in here have a regular landline phone at home? That's about everybody. So that if you take your natural voice, perhaps you could be heard clearly a block away, maybe 2 blocks away. If 8 blocks equal a mile, we'll call it a quarter of a mile. And on the weekend, perhaps without even cost directly, you can, with a cell phone, call to, say, LA, 3,000 miles away. That, again, is a force multiplier through the power of modeling. 12,000 times in that particular instance. With Gagut, God Almighty's Grand Unified Theorem, we go to another level. The examples just mentioned, and there are thousands, millions of more examples, all fall out of but 2 values inside of Gagut, in which there are contained plus and minus infinity value generating capability. Which means you can start on the minus side and go from -1 to minus infinity, meaning never stop that iteration. You can go from +1 out that way, never stop the positive iteration. 2 of those values pick up the whole in its essence of Einstein, Newton, and Maxwell's work, and some of the work Schrodinger in quantum mechanics. Whereas Gagut, to repeat, gives us plus and minus infinity. So that's something of the so what of Gagut. We are walking around in a world of modeling. What has been gifted to us now from Almighty God is the capacity to build a new world of supreme modeling, which brings with it then all the product, the economic and financial gains inherent of the supremacy of modeling capability. at something of Gagut. As has perhaps been somewhat indicated, when you have a unified field, the particular physical objects therein functionally are concentrations in a field, which distinguishes that perception from that of Newton, who, to put it roughly, saw things as billiard balls. Sharp edges stop and start, rather than concentrations in a field. We have present with us this afternoon, as has already been indicated, an extraordinary concentration in the field. This concentration is a human being, a black man, an original man, an African.
Whoever possesses the secrets of this theorem possesses enormous and extraordinary power, ready for any society of people who will use that power.
However, fed people with magic, in terms of little peanut, fed people, kept them from starvation. Morgan and all the other folks, okay, never mind that those were happening. But even us were forced through this indoctrination process to separate that, from the realities of how we view ourselves. Even though we're inventing rocketry and all that, because of the guns to our head, we felt like we were working for somebody. We were in somebody else's house. We were, so-called owned. Now, then the question is, well, what about Gagut? Gagut actually connected the dots in a line of legacy in terms of its origin, where it originated from, which is Mother Africa. I was born in Africa. I was taught by the Africans on both sides of Atlantic, but definitely both groups of the black people, okay, who taught me, point to the origin, even in their own teachings, of where Gagut came from, which is, Gagut is basically geometry. Geometry was developed on the motherland, Africa. And that is, in other words, this is the summary, the summary, the totality, or the ultimate geometry, if you will. G-I-J, J equals 0. So, in every way you look at it, Gagut is authentically black.
Professor Gabriel Oyibo stated that Ma'at, the African concept of truth and balance, is key to our leadership in the world. Truth, he said, is fundamental to freedom and mental health. Africans in the diaspora especially suffer from post-traumatic slavery syndrome. They were systematically stripped of their names, their customs, their deity, and their legacy. The great accomplishments of their forebears were coveted and claimed by their conquerors as their achievements.
We got to deal with history not from his story, but from our story. We got to deal with our story as it is written from an African point of view. That is important. There is no such thing as objective history. No one can write objective anything and be a party to the objectivity. Europeans must write history of Africa from the European point of view, how we met each other, the interest involved in this history. When Europeans write about me, they cannot write about me in justice. If they write about me in justice, they must close shop. When Europeans speak about me, they cannot talk about me in terms of antiquity, because they will have to close all the museums and all the libraries in the world that they have. And they can't do that. What we need to do, however, as Professor George James said in his book of like names, Stolen Legacy, that the stolen legacy must be corrected by ourselves. A man called Hodgson, an Englishman, and he should know from whence he'd speak in this case, he was the Governor General for Ghana. They then called it Gold Coast. And Hodgson, in the last part of his paragraph in the highway, said we shall probably have to wait until African historians write for the African reading public before we know the true history of Africa. Hodgson was dead wrong. We don't have to wait. No probability. If we didn't write, Hodgson wouldn't have any education at all. There would be no England for him to talk about. Long before England, a place called Pyrrhus, Pyrrhus, dealing with the first writer of Europe, a man called Homer, in his Odyssey stated, even the god Zeus and Apollo came from Ethiopia. So we don't have to write. Hodgson think that we have to now write because nobody knows about us. And we need to tell people about us. That is untrue. Even the concept of a God. There is no record of any other people on the face of the earth other than the people of the Nile that started the concept of a God, a deity.
A person who does not know his or her history cannot know his or herself. You can only be yourself when you know yourself. I mean your ancestral self. And self and God are interconnected. If you do not know self, you cannot know God. God is in self. That is why our ancestors wrote on the walls of their temples and universities, "Man, know thyself." In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with the Almighty God. And the Word became the instrument of creation. Language is the greatest instrument of creation ever constructed by human beings. It gives humans the ability to objectify their will. It sets them aside from all other creatures. With one's word, one can give life or take life. One can build, one can destroy. In the beginning, there was only African people. About 90,000 years ago, they began to construct language. Language is a creation of African people. All languages on the face of the earth are adaptations from the mother tongue of Africa. On the shores of Lake Rutanzia, archaeologists found the earliest known mathematical tool dating to be more than 20,000 years old. It is an African dating tool based upon astronomical and lunar periods. It is called the Ishango bone, East Africa, more than 20,000 years ago. From the earliest of times, more than 50,000 BCE, Africans are burying their dead. But by 16,000 BCE, they have cemeteries and a belief in an afterlife. This is 16,000 years before Christianity is established. They also have developed a common cosmology and a comprehensive understanding of man's harmonious relationship with nature, the universe, and how the principles and laws of the two interrelate. African philosophy is centered around an optimistic, orderly, and harmonious universe where man is a microcosm of the macrocosm. By 15,000 BCE, in the region that is now Kenya, Africans were domesticating cattle. This is the earliest record of this practice. This is 4,000 years earlier than in the Near East. At that time, what is the Near East was also peopled by Africans. Africans migrated all over the world and brought their science and technology with them. Some scientists now believe that the Great Pyramid of Giza is more than 10,000 years old because of its orientation to the star complex Sirius. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the most perfect structure ever erected by man. Nothing compares to it before or after. It is a perfect structure. Here in the bosom of the Nile sets the greatest man-made sculpture in the history of art. More than 8,000 years ago, Haru-in-Akhet, the great Sphinx, is sculptured out of solid rock. It remains one of the great wonders of the world. More than 3 stories high and a block long, it has no equals. More than 20,000 years ago, in East Africa, Africans are the first to systematically cultivate crops. They grow cereal grains in the Nile Valley region between Nubia and Egypt. This is the beginning of the science of agriculture. They also develop special stone tools for clearing undergrowth and digging sticks for planting and weeding. They create grinding stones for root seeds, etc. We speak of time as a river of passing events. It flows in every direction endlessly, from infinity to infinity. Time, like space, is a profound intellectual concept, a concept of African origin. For it was in Africa that time was given structure, given form, seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and years. More than 7,000 years ago, Africans created the world's first 365 day year calendar. More than 8,000 years ago, Africans are the first to develop writing. The Shemsu-Haru people, whose deity is Horus, migrated into Nubia from the south and introduced writing. They are the predecessors of the Taseki kings and dynastic kingship, even before Egypt was Iraq. Cotton and cotton fabrics are first cultivated in Africa. More than 8,000 years ago, in the western Sudan, the Mandi people were domesticating cotton. They are the oldest cotton cultivators in the world. 6,000 years ago, Africans have the largest population in the world, along the Nile Valley, that is Nubia and Egypt. They reach more than 200,000 with a rich and abundant production of agricultural goods. They have regional rulers and a large craftsman population producing gold, copper, pottery, cloth, stoneware, and many other standardized productions for trade. They traded as far away as the Mediterranean and beyond. They have engineers, which are building basins and canals to control the Nile River. Underpinning African philosophy is that things are cyclical. They move in cycles. There shall never be a year without seasons. Therefore, the first shall be last. In 332 BCE, the first known Europeans would come into Africa. They are the Greeks. They were illiterate. They had no institutions of higher learning. They had no alphabet in which to write. It was the Kemetic people of Africa, called Egyptians, who gave their language an alphabet. Their coming marks the beginning of the fall of Africa. Over the next 2,000 years, Africans would experience a long and arduous struggle to maintain their humanity, dignity, and worldview. They would be captured, enslaved, dehumanized, and subjected to the footstool of the human race. The first shall be last. After 2,000 years of European intrusion into Africa, in the cyclical nature, Professor Gabriel Oyibo would be blessed by the Almighty God to formulate the equation for the unified field theorem. The unified field theorem is the holy grail of physics and mathematics, whose search has spanned centuries with the finest minds and greatest names in science: Isaac Newton, Maxwell, and Albert Einstein, including others, all toiled to formulate this theory, but could not. By the second half of the 20th century, the search for the unified field theorem had become the hottest intellectual race among great men of science. In 1994, Professor Gabriel Oyibo would be blessed by the Almighty God to formulate the equation for the unified field theorem. In the cyclical being of nature, this discovery signifies nothing less than the last is now first. Professor Oyibo's arrival in Nigeria was a tremendously joyful occasion. Hundreds of Nigerians found into account for and Greek.
Nigerians are celebrating. Excellence, achievement of one of their own, Professor Gabriel Oyibo. And as you can see, the whole country is agog to welcome this great man. The man has changed the destiny of the whole world. And he happens to be one of our own. And we are here to welcome him to his fatherland, Nigeria. All the people that have come in here, even though this is at night, it's not daytime when all the crowd would have been here, but you can see that the enthusiasm is high. And a man of achievement like Professor Oyibo needs to be celebrated.
What would you like to say to the world at this time in terms of what it is that Professor Oyibo has done and the possibilities in terms of creating space for peace and new discoveries? How do you express that as a Nigerian?
Well, as you see, before Professor Oyibo, we had Isaac Newton, we had Albert Einstein, and the entire world accepted them and honored them. Today, it is Professor Oyibo who has extended the frontiers of learning in science. And the world is to benefit by exploiting his discovery to better mankind. We in Nigeria will do just that, to see how we can make the best use of this great discovery. And the man of our time, Professor Gabriel Oyibo, is one we are expecting. And he will be the arrowhead for this great exploitation of the benefits of the discovery.
Yeah, Honorable Chief Frank Ineke. I represent Idao Ibaji Galamela Odolu Federal Constituency of Kogi State in the National Assembly of Nigeria.
Now, how do you feel here this afternoon? What's happening here?
I feel very great. I feel on top of the world. I've always been very proud of Professor Gabriel Oyibo for his articulate position right from youth. And more so is the recent achievement to bring to not just a race, but the entire human race, what has not been done before, what every other scientist had made frantic efforts all their life to discover, they have not been able to. But God in His infinite mercy has been able to grant that through Professor Gabriel Oyibo today. Anybody that is associated with him should really be very proud, and more so.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to be back home.
it wasn't an accident that I am representing you in the capacity that you sent me to represent you. If you can see me, it is because I'm standing on the shoulders of those giants. The reason we're here is research and development. Why is that important? Well, a lot of people have said things already about that. And especially the Nigerian situation, where academics are looked upon as some abstract entities that are of very little value to the society. This particular occasion is very critical in that respect. In terms of a modern situation, a nation can be defined as a marriage between universities and the industries. And the leadership is what actually held that marriage. In America, that marriage is between the Ivy League universities and other universities on the one hand, and the Fortune 500 on the other side. That marriage is so critical that without it, America does not exist. There cannot be an ITM without an MIT. Harvard is useless without Boeing. Therefore, there cannot be Nigeria without a marriage which is being cemented today in this occasion. So within a marriage, children are produced, or products come out of that marriage. And that's what produces a prosperous nation. This marriage has become very critical because the marriage has to produce the kind of prosperity that will be needed to build infrastructures. What that means is that Nigeria now plays the role of UK in the 1600s. Cambridge was the beginning of the era that put the Europeans in leadership, with Isaac Newton being used as a symbol of that process. Cambridge remained a university to go to because Newton, the most illustrious son of Cambridge, discovered part of Gagut. He discovered a tiny bit of GI J4.0, which is Gagut, and put the Europeans on the leadership of the world. Now, what you have here is a totality of that deal, which is comprises everything that puts Nigeria on behalf of Africa, the leader of the world. It means that Cambridge will have to come to Nigeria to study that. So I want us to put in mind this marriage, which is the basis of our taking the role of leadership in the world. And this is not some abstract statement, this is real. Because Nigeria now is home for God Almighty's Grand Unified Theorem. The man that is taking care of me. Oh. Yes. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Yes.
I would say I am proud, and the entire state is proud to welcome his son, one of his sons, who had made Kogi State proud, and permit me to say we are proud to be associated with you. Not only an asset to Kogi State or Nigeria, but the whole world. And there is need for us to tap this wonderful gems that God has given to Kogi State. I maintain that the federal government should do something. And if they're first to do something, Kogi State, with its little might, will do all we can to give all the support we need. I will not conclude without saying big thank you to all the members of National University Commission for the good job they have done by arranging this beautiful and an important visit to all the universities here in Nigeria. I'm sure you are coming here will expose most of the things that we don't know. And I'm sure it will encourage some of our children to do better, because everybody wants to do as much as we have done, if not better. So I'm sure it's a sort of encouragement to our youth in the university. You are welcome to Kogi State. You are welcome to Nigeria. Thank you.
You are traveled far away, not Nigeria should develop. Welcome back home. We thank God for Johnny Mercy's welcome back home. You are welcome, welcome back home. No place like home, welcome back home. You are traveled north, south, east, and west.
The people were warm and hospitable. The warmth of the land and the rhythm of the people was music to my soul. Always it left me feeling that I am truly back home. The West has projected negative images of Africa in general and Nigeria in particular. However, it was my experience with the people in Nigeria that made me realize, despite the myriad of problems facing Nigeria, the Nigerian people are strong, hard-working, productive, people full of love for family and country, people who are capable of overcoming all of their obstacles. Nigeria is the most populated country in Africa. Abuja, its capital city, is the first city designed by African architects and built by African engineers in the 21st century. The Capitol building has a dome structure to remind the world that this dome was first conceived and built by Africans in ancient times. It was used by the Coptic African Egyptian priesthood, who conceived and developed Christianity and later constructed the first Christian church, the Hagia Sophia, built in 537 of the Common Era. I was pleased to see it erected as the crest in the Capitol building of the capital city of Nigeria. Everywhere I went, I saw proud black men building their future. I went to many towns and villages. The marketplaces were among my favorite places, perhaps because